We often think of neighbors as the people we can rely on, the ones who borrow sugar, water our plants when we're away, or wave at us when we take out the trash. But what if the person living right next door, the one you've casually nodded to for years, isn't who they seem to be? What if the people living just feet away from your home have dark secrets buried deep beneath their yards? These stories aren't about ghosts or demons. They're about something much worse, real people. Here are 5 terrifying true stories of neighbors who hid horrifying secrets. Stories that will make you question how well you really know the people living next door. It started with a smell. At first, I thought it was the garbage chute. The hallway of my apartment building had this lingering, rancid stench that grew stronger every day. It smelled like something rotting, like a dead animal stuck in the vents. The landlord, Mr. Hensley, said he'd check it out, but the smell didn't go away. If anything, it got worse. Then the flies came. They clustered around the door of apartment 303, the unit directly next to mine. It belonged to a man named Doug. I had only spoken to him a few times. He was in his late 50s, balding, and kept to himself. I'd see him every so often taking out his trash or standing on his balcony, smoking. But no one had seen him in weeks. One night, I was coming home from work when I saw something that made my stomach drop. Doug's door was slightly open, just enough for me to see inside. The stench hit me instantly, thick, putrid, and suffocating. I gagged and stepped back. That's when I noticed the dark stains smeared across the wooden floor. Something was wrong. I knocked. No answer. I pushed the door open further, and what I saw will haunt me forever. Doug was sitting in his recliner, completely still. His head was tilted at an unnatural angle, his eyes sunken and lifeless. His skin was pale and mottled with dark spots, and his mouth was slightly open as if frozen mid-sentence. But the worst part? His hands were gripping the armrests so tightly that his nails had dug deep into the fabric. Doug had been dead for weeks. The police later discovered a hidden room in his apartment, filled with old VHS tapes, hundreds of them. Each was labeled with different dates spanning over 20 years. They were all recordings of people, neighbors, strangers walking by his window, children playing in the park. And one of the most recent tapes, it had my name on it. I had just moved into my first house, a small 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood. The price was suspiciously low, but I chalked it up to the market and my realtor's eagerness to make a sale. For the first few weeks, everything was fine. That was until I started hearing noises coming from inside the walls. At first, I thought it was rats or some kind of pest. Scratching, tapping, and faint whispers that I convinced myself were just my imagination. But then, things started going missing. Little things. My keys, my phone charger, a loaf of bread I knew I had bought the day before. One night, I woke up to the sound of my bedroom closet door creaking open. My heart nearly stopped. I turned on the light, expecting to see nothing. But then, I noticed something strange. The floor vent at the bottom of my closet was unscrewed, slightly ajar. I peered inside. That's when I saw it. A single bloodshot eye was staring back at me. I screamed and fell backward. The vent cover clattered to the floor, and in the dim light, I saw fingers, long, thin fingers, gripping the edges of the opening before retreating back into the darkness. The police arrived within minutes, but what they found still makes my skin crawl. There was a hidden crawl space behind my walls, and inside, they found a sleeping bag, empty food wrappers, bottles filled with God knows what. Someone had been living inside my house. They never found her. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear the tapping. Every town has that house. The one kids dare each other to walk past at night. The one everyone avoids. For us, it was the old Foster house. It had been abandoned for years, ever since Mr. Foster, the owner, disappeared without a trace. One night, on a dare, my friend Kevin and I decided to peek inside. We brought flashlights and slipped through a broken window. The air was thick with dust, and the house smelled of rot and mildew. As we explored, we found a staircase leading to the basement. The door was slightly open, and a cold draft seeped through the gap. Then we heard it. A voice. A low, raspy whisper came from the darkness below. We bolted, but as I turned back for one last look, I saw something that still haunts me. A pair of glowing eyes was staring at us from the shadows of the basement. The house was boarded up the next day. No one ever went inside again. But sometimes, late at night, people still hear whispers coming from the basement. My neighbor, Mr. Thompson, was always smiling. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was wrong. Too wide. Too forced. I catch him staring at me from his porch, grinning like he knew something I didn't. One day, I saw him digging in his backyard. The hole was deep, too deep for a garden. Curiosity got the best of me, and I waited until he left to peek over the fence. There was something wrapped in a tarp at the bottom of the hole. Something human-sized. I never called the police. I should have, because a week later he was gone, and so was his wife. No one ever saw them again. But the hole? It was still there. I grew up in a house that always felt off. The air was heavy, like something unseen was constantly watching. But I never understood why, until I found the room. A hidden door behind a bookshelf led to a tiny, windowless space. The walls were covered in pictures of me, taken at different times from different angles. Some were from outside my school, some from inside the house. I told my parents. They called the cops. But when they arrived, they found something even more terrifying. A small mattress, pile of old clothes, and a fresh bowl of food. Someone had been living in our house, watching me. We moved out the next day. You think you know your neighbors, but the truth is you never really do. Sometimes the person living next door isn't just a friendly face. Sometimes they're watching, waiting, and sometimes they never left. When I moved into my new apartment, everything seemed normal. My neighbors were polite, the building was quiet, and the rent was cheap. Almost too cheap. Then I met Mr. Dawson, the man in 207. He was an older guy in his late 60s, with watery blue eyes and a permanent frown. He never spoke to anyone, never left his apartment. One night, as I was heading to my car, I saw something that sent chills down my spine. His door was wide open. I don't know why, but I stopped and peeked inside. The apartment was completely empty. No furniture, no personal belongings. Just a dark, empty room, and the smell of rotting meat. That's when I heard it. A whisper, coming from the shadows. "You shouldn't be here." I ran. The next morning, I asked the landlord about Mr. Dawson. The response made my blood run cold. "There is no one in 207. That apartment has been vacant for years." Then who did I see? A friend of mine, Sandra, worked as a real estate agent. She once told me about a house in her neighborhood that had been on the market for over 10 years. No one would buy it. At first, she thought it was just bad luck. But one night, she stayed late at the office, organizing paperwork. when she heard something strange. A voicemail. It was from a number she didn't recognize. The message was short. "Please help me. I'm still in the house." Sandra assumed it was a prank, but curiosity got the better of her. The next day, she visited the house. The front door was unlocked. Inside, everything was covered in dust, untouched. But there was one thing out of place. A fresh cup of coffee is sitting on the kitchen counter, still warm. Sandra never went back. The house is still vacant. For months, my neighbor, Mrs. Caldwell, kept telling me she felt like she was being watched. "I see him at night," she'd say, standing in the window across the street. I brushed it off, until one night I saw him too. A tall, gaunt figure was standing motionless in the second-floor window of the house across from hers. No lights were on, just him watching. I decided to investigate. I walked over to the house and knocked on the door. No answer, but the front door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The air was stale, thick with dust. The furniture was covered in sheets. The whole house was abandoned. But upstairs, in that second-floor room, I found something that still haunts me. A wooden chair, facing the window, and on the seat, a pile of human teeth. I lived in a duplex for a short time. My neighbor, Sam, was a quiet guy, kept to himself, never had visitors. One night, I heard thumping noises coming from his side of the house. Rhythmic, slow. Then came the scraping, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. The next morning, I ran into him outside. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, hands trembling. "Renovating," I joked. He just stared at me, blankly. That night, the noises started again. This time, I pressed my ear to the wall. I heard whimpering. A woman's voice. "Please, help me." The next morning, Sam was gone. Vanished. But his basement door? Left wide open. The police never found him. But they did find a tunnel, leading under my house. When I was a kid, there was a man who lived at the end of my street. Mr. Grayson. He always wore the same clothes, the same hat. Never seemed to age. One Halloween, my friend and I dared each other to knock on his door. The moment we did, the door creaked open on its own. Inside, the house was cold. Dust covered everything. And then we saw the photographs. Hundreds of them. All of us. Every kid in the neighborhood. Taken at different times, spanning decades. Some of the photos were from years before we were even born. But in every single picture, Mr. Grayson looked exactly the same. Do you think you know the people living around you? Think again. Because sometimes, the scariest things aren't out there, they're right next door. And one of these stories isn't over yet. Because deep down, you know there's something off about the people who live around you. Maybe it's the neighbor who never opens their blinds. Maybe it's the house that's been vacant for years, but you swear you saw someone in the window. Or maybe, just maybe, you're the one being watched. There's a house in my neighborhood that's been vacant for over a decade. Or at least that's what everyone thought. But last winter, during a blizzard, I saw something that made my blood run cold. I was shoveling my driveway when I glanced at the house. And in the upstairs window, barely visible through the snow, I saw a face, pale, motionless, watching me. I blinked, and it was gone. A few nights later, I was up late watching TV when I heard it. A knock, but not at my door. At my window. I live on the second floor. I never looked outside. And the next morning, fresh footprints led from my house, straight to the vacant home. When I bought my first home, I thought I was getting a great deal. It was an older house, a little run down, but nothing that couldn't be fixed. Then I discovered the hidden door in the basement. First, I thought it was just a storage space. But when I pried it open, I found a narrow staircase leading down to something much older. A room, with a bed, a chair, and deep scratches on the walls. Someone had been kept here. The scariest part? I found a notebook under the bed. The last entry was written just a week before I moved in. "He's still watching me." I moved out the next day. My next-door neighbor was a quiet, older man named Frank. I never paid much attention to him until I started hearing the digging. It started late at night, around 2 a.m. At first, I thought he was working on his garden, but the digging continued night after night. One night, I decided to peek over the fence. Frank was standing in the middle of his yard, shoveling dirt into a deep hole. And beside the hole, a plastic-wrapped bundle. I called the cops. They searched the yard, but the hole, it was empty. The next morning, Frank's house was completely abandoned. No sign of him, just an open door, and a fresh hole in my backyard. For weeks, my neighbor Tom kept complaining that his dog wouldn't stop barking at the backyard fence. Every night, the barking would start at exactly 3 a.m. One night, I decided to look for it myself. I stood at my window, staring into the backyard, and that's when I saw her, a woman, standing perfectly still just beyond the fence. She was wearing a white dress, her hair hanging in long, tangled strands. Her head was tilted, her eyes locked on me. Then, she did something that sent chills through my body. She smiled. Tom moved away the next week, but I still see her, every night, and she's getting closer. For a long time, I thought I lived alone, until one night when my landlord called me. "Are you in the apartment right now?" "Yeah, why?" I asked. There was a long silence. Then he said, "Then who just opened your attic door?" I turned around slowly. The attic hatch in my hallway, the one I had never opened, was slightly ajar. I grabbed a chair, climbed up, and pushed it open. There was nothing inside, just dust, and a small pile of food wrappers in the corner. Someone had been living above me. I moved out the next morning, but every so often when I walk by that building, I see a shadow move behind the attic window. "You're still here? Good, because we're not done yet. Remember the neighbor who dug holes at night? Frank? The police never found him. But last week, something strange happened. A house 3 blocks away was put up for sale. Guess who the listing agent was? Frank. Same face, same name, like nothing ever happened. But the new owners? They found a hole in their backyard. And in the hole, a door. When I moved into my new apartment, I was warned about one particular neighbor. "Don't talk to the man in 4B, the landlord told me. "He's strange." I didn't think much of it at first, until the first night. I woke up around 2 a.m. to a strange sound outside my door. A slow, rhythmic tapping. Tap, tap, tap. I looked through the peephole. The man in 4B was standing there, smiling, not knocking, not moving, just standing in the hallway, staring at my door. I backed away slowly. The tapping continued. The next morning, I confronted the landlord. His face turned pale. 4B has been empty for months. I moved out that night. A couple moved into the house next door last summer. They were nice at first, always waving when they saw me. Then, one evening, they built a fence. I don't mean a small backyard fence. I mean a 12-foot-high, solid black wooden wall. Overnight, it had no gate, no openings, no explanation. I asked them about it the next day. The wife wouldn't look at me. The husband just shook his head. Then he said something I'll never forget. "It's not to keep people out." I haven't seen them since. And some nights, I hear scratching on the other side. There's an abandoned house on my street. Or at least it used to be abandoned. One morning, I was walking my dog when I saw it. The boarded-up windows were gone. The weeds in the yard had been cut. The front door was open. I saw someone standing in the doorway. A woman. She had no expression. She wasn't moving, just staring at me. I walked faster. When I turned back, the house was abandoned again. I don't walk that way anymore. There's a man who lives in my neighborhood. I've never seen him in his house. I've only seen him sitting in his car, day and night, rain or shine. The car never moves. He just sits there, watching. A few nights ago, I finally got the nerve to walk past and look inside. There was nobody in the car. But the next morning, when I left for work, he was sitting there again. And this time, he waved. There's a house 2 blocks over. But it doesn't show up on Google Maps. It has no mailbox, no street number. No one ever goes in. No one ever comes out. One night, my friend dared me to knock on the door, just to see what would happen. I walked up the porch steps, my heart pounding. I knocked once. Nothing. I knocked again. Still nothing. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something strange. The doorknob was wet, and when I looked down, I realized I was standing in a small puddle of water. I don't know why, but I ran, and the next day, the house was gone, like it had never been there. Still here? Good, because this is where things get worse. Remember Frank, the neighbor who dug at night? I told you he disappeared. That was true. But last week, something else happened. The new family that moved into his house, they started noticing something strange. At exactly 3 a.m. every night, their doorbell rings. But when they check the camera feed, there's nobody there, nobody visible, until last night, when the husband rewound the footage, frame by frame, and for just a fraction of a second, he saw a hand. A rotting, dirt-covered hand was reaching for the door, and below it, a shovel. Frank is back, and this time, he's not alone. You've made it this far. But let me ask you this, are you sure you want to hear the end? Because once you know the truth, once you see how this story ends, you might wish you never started. These weren't just stories. These were warnings. Started as a joke. I'd hear scratching inside the walls at night, and my roommate would laugh it off. Probably mice, he said. But then I started noticing something strange. The scratches weren't random. They were patterns, like someone was writing something from the other side. One night, I recorded the sound and played it back in slow motion. It wasn't scratching. It was whispering. When I enhanced the audio, I heard 2 words that made my stomach drop. Turn around. I moved out the next day. I live in a small cul-de-sac. Everyone keeps to themselves, except for one neighbor. He knows everything about me. At first, I thought he was just observant. Then, one night, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a picture of me inside my house. I checked every window, every door. Everything was locked. Then, another text. Nice curtains. That's when I realized the picture was taken from inside my house. The apartment next to mine was vacant. Or at least, that's what the landlord said. But at night, I'd hear footsteps. Heavy ones. Pacing. One night, I knocked on the door. I just wanted to see if someone was squatting inside. I heard knocking back. I stepped closer. The knocking matched my movements. And then, a voice from the other side whispered, "Please help me." The next morning, I asked the landlord again. His face turned pale. "That apartment," he said, "has been sealed shut for years. Every morning, I wake up and check my security camera footage. It's a habit." One day, I noticed something strange. At exactly 3:13 a.m., a man appeared on my lawn. Not moving, not walking, just standing there, staring up at my bedroom window. The next night, he was there again. But this time, he was closer. The next night, closer. And then one morning, I woke up to muddy footprints inside my house. You remember Frank? The neighbor who dug in his yard at night? The one who disappeared without a trace. Well, turns out he never left. After the new family moved in, their security cameras kept glitching. Motion sensors kept going off at random hours. And then, one night, the father went down to check the basement. That's when he found it. A hidden door behind the shelves. He pulled it open, and inside, tunnel, leading straight under my house. Frank was never gone. He was underneath us the whole time, and he wasn't alone. The ending, or is it? Some neighbors keep their secrets well hidden. Some houses have walls that remember everything. And some people, they don't just watch, they wait. So before you go to bed tonight, before you turn off the lights, ask yourself, do you really know who's living next door? Or better yet, who's watching from the darkness? Because sometimes, they're closer than you think. What do you think happened? That's the terrifying part, isn't it? Some stories never really end. But now I want to hear from you. Which story sent chills down your spine the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had a terrifying experience with a neighbor? Tell your story in the comments, or email it to frighteningtruths@gmail.com. You will see it in a future video. Want more real-life horror? Hit that like button and share this video with someone who thinks they know their neighbors. And if you're brave enough to keep coming back for more, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a chilling new story. Because next time, the horror might be closer than you think. See you in the next one.